Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the Yellow Gloves podcast. It's good to be back. I was in Japan for like 2 weeks. I'm a little bit jet lagged. I'm a little bit under the weather, but I'm here and that's all that matters, I guess. So we had a pretty fucking awesome Cage Warriors card on the weekend that just passed, or on the Friday, really. It was, an epic weekend overall for UK MMA. Obviously, with Leon Edwards getting his hand raised in the main event of UFC 286. But we are here to talk about Cage Warriors and Cage Warriors 150 in particular. So let's get started with that. So, Cage Warriors 150 was, in my opinion, a kind of rip roaring success for the organization. It was the first proper card of the year. You guys already know how I feel about the San Diego cards. They don't really interest me too much. They feel like Cage Warriors are, doing their thing in the US, which is awesome, and they're building a presence in California, which is, it's great to see for the organization. It's nice to see them branch out, but as a fan of the organization and as a fan of the fight, sometimes I feel like we get too many, rubber matches, too many weird matchups that you're going to get that with regional MMA anyways, but the California one feels a bit too egregious for me. So I personally was really excited for Cage Warriors 150 and I had a blast with it. I think we had only one fight go to decision on the night. It was 10 fights overall, 9 finishes. Everyone basically got choked out on this card, and we're going to look at the card in depth and all of the fights. But I think, what do we watch Cage Warriors for? We watch it for the pacing, for the great matchups on the UK scene, especially, and we watch it for the finishes. Cage Warriors has a reputation for being super violent. I think Andy Hickey, if anyone follows him on social media, I think last year he posted like the stats of the organizations that had the most finishes, and I think Cage Warriors had more finishes than any other promotion. That's including Bellator, UFC. It's to be expected with matchmaking. Sometimes, if you put a really good guy against a really bad guy, knockouts are going to happen. But we've also seen finishes happen in really high level fights, like Reese McKee versus Justin Burlinson last year, for example. So let's just get right into this card, guys. So for me, as I said, it was a great card, and I want to start obviously with the main event of Jordan Vucenic versus Tiziano Ferranti. Man, was it good to see Jordan Vucenic back after the, for lack of a better term, the beating that Paul Hughes put on him. Competitive first round, then Paul Hughes just beat the brakes off Vucenic. It was a pretty hard to watch fight. Vucenic is one of the good guys in MMA, and you hate to see those kind of guys get a beating put on them. But to come back not long after, I think it was like 116 days, maybe they threw it up on the broadcast at maybe 111, 100 and something for sure. It's not that long, we're talking just over 3.5 months, maybe 4 months of no Jordan Vucenic. Usually fighters take a bit more time off, but I think it just goes to show Vucenic wanted to put that result in the past and wanted to show that he's still the Jordan Vucenic that we knew as a future UFC hopeful, our Cage Warriors champion, probably going to be champion again in the future. Who knows? So with this fight, even before the fight starts, Jordan Vucenic's walkout is always brilliant, right? And I just got chills watching him walk out. The song that he walks out to is synonymous with him now. Brad Wharton wrote a really nice piece about Vucenic before the fight, using that song as well as part of the headline of the piece. And I think it's really important when fighters have their own trademark or fighters have something that they're known for, and a walkout's always good. I mean, for those of us who grew up watching MMA during the heyday of Japanese MMA, of Pride and all of that, like the drama of it, the pageantry of it, it's always awesome. And I think Vucenic definitely has that with his walkout. But I got chills just watching him walk out. It felt like he was going to win. Like when you see him walk out, that confidence, that smile, he's got the energized glasses on, which was great to see. And God, he's just one of the guys you love to see win. So first round starts and Vucenic opens with a really nice roundhouse to the body, already looking really loose, not looking like someone who's gun shy or someone who's afraid of getting hit. And immediately, tight double leg, gets the fight to the ground. And for the rest of that first round, just dominates, has a nice body lock, takes the back, single hooks, but didn't manage to do much with it. And it was just pure dominance, pure dominance in that first round. But for me, guys, like Vucenic is just such a prolific back taker. I tweeted about this as I was, watching the fights the day after they happened because I'd flown in from Japan to London. It was a whole thing. Vucenic is, yeah, an insanely prolific back taker. He's one of the best for me in the sport. And I mean that, without any hyperbole, and I do genuinely think across the entire sport, this guy's one of the best back takers in MMA. Really impressive how he always kind of consistently finds those positions in fights, whether it's through like the body lock while standing or transitioning on the mat. Just love how emphatically he beat down on Ferranti the same way that Hughes beat down on him. So it's it wasn't to that extent obviously, but it's good to see, as I always say, the good guys in MMA win. Vucenic second round finds his way to the back as he always bloody does, gets the neck, nice rear naked choke. The crowd reaction was amazing. Everyone was there to see Vucenic win, and I'm just so happy for the guy. And I think don't be surprised if you see him back in the title picture very soon. There's so many great fights for him still in Cage Warriors. I do think that a couple more wins or maybe one more win will probably see him in the UFC. We talked about this in the Yellow Gloves end of year awards pod, and don't be surprised if we see a trilogy one day between Paul Hughes and Vucenic in the UFC, like not even under the Cage Warriors banner. So that's a prediction that I've been floating around there for a while. So let's see if that potentially could happen, because I think Hughes is definitely UFC bound, and Vucenic won't be too far behind, I don't think. One thing that did frustrate me a little bit is Cage Warriors has this thing of not giving the mic to the fighters after they win. I get it, especially when like we're praising the pacing of Cage Warriors. It's nice that we can go from fight to fight to fight to fight, but when you've got a moment like Vucenic winning in front of the same crowd that he lost emphatically to Hughes, it's obviously something, right? And I I just wish Cage Warriors had put a microphone in his face and just let the man talk, because I'm sure he had so much to say about what he's gone through in the last 3-4 months, what his journey has been like, the mental struggles that he might have had with that fight as well, and how good it feels to finally get back in the win column, right? So that's one thing I'd love to see from Cage Warriors. Just, I'm not saying put the mic in front of every single fighter after they win, but you've got to be conscious of the special moments in the sport. You've got to be conscious of the special moments in the organization. And that was, for me, a moment that I'll remember for the rest of this year for sure, with Vucenic's return. So definitely a moment where, the guy should have been given a microphone, but what can you do? I don't run Cage Warriors, so I'm just a guy in front of a microphone. So let's move on. Jamie Richardson versus Justin Burlinson was our co-main event. And if you've been following me for a while, you know just how much I respect both of these fighters, especially Jamie Richardson. I think Jamie Richardson is so underrated. He's not got the sexiest record, not got the most appealing record, but it's because of the way he fights. He goes out there and it's hammer and tongs for the whole fight, right? He's either the hammer or the nail, and that's just the way it goes with Jamie Richardson. And that's why he loses so much. It's also why he wins so much, right? Because when you fight that way, it's always going to be 50-50. But the guy's a slugger. He's got a really good chin. And I just respect the guy immensely. And then with Burlinson, I mean, you could just copy and paste what I just said and tie it into Justin Burlinson, another guy who, does have the nice record, is a winning fighter, has a great amateur background. Obviously, coming off the Reese McKee fight, a fight that he was doing really well in, was probably on the cusp of winning the belt, right? Especially in that first round where he's just putting a pasting on McKee, loses it. But it was nice to see Justin Burlinson back as well. This was definitely a card of comebacks, of redemption arcs, if you will. And it was a slow start to the fight between both of them. You expect two firefighters to just start slugging, and it was more of a technical brawl, in my opinion. There wasn't really any crazy swings of the pendulum. There wasn't any crazy swings of punches, right? But it was a really good technical brawl. Started slow in the first round, but then you saw Justin Burlinson's jab just pawing away at Richardson's nose. His nose was leaking really early, but then Richardson has that strong right hand that he always manages to land. Burlinson's eye just swelling up right at the beginning of the fight. There were moments where Burlinson tried to swarm Richardson, but couldn't really land effectively. And as these two were going at it, I had it 19-19 going into the third round. I thought it was very, very even. But I was thinking, man, when is Burlinson going to grapple? Because we know he's got such a nice grappling base. He's a guy who, when he gets to fight on the ground, it's submission attempts, it's ground and pound after ground and pound after ground and pound. He's not someone who just sits in guard or sits holding different positions. He's someone who always goes for the finish. And I was thinking, this is so evenly matched. When is Burlinson really going to grapple? So then it happens, right? It happens in the third round, hyper competitive fight, but Burlinson just uses his smarts, and this is why this is where records are interesting, and why some fighters have better records than others, right? Like Richardson will happily do another round of just beating your face in, and you beating his face in, but Burlinson's thinking other things. He's thinking title, he's thinking his future as an MMA fighter, and he thinks, well, I've got the wrestling in my back pocket. Why am I going to risk another round of scrapping with this credible and veteran scrapper when I can just take him down? And that's exactly what happened. Starts to wrestle in the third round, really nice elbows early on the ground, puts in a nice like tight body lock position, smothers Richardson entirely, and then he just blankets Richardson. That's all it is. He just straight up drowns Richardson in the third. Manages to find his way to attack the back and then bites down on the rear naked choke. Really good finish. Puts Richardson to sleep. I don't think I can't recall that Richardson actually tapped. So, which isn't a surprise if you know the way Richardson fights. But it was good to see Burlinson back. I think someone again that we need to keep an eye on in the welterweight division, because I do think that there's always good stuff for him in Cage Warriors, and we've obviously got the Judo Gym and Reese McKee fight. I'm sure that's a fight that Burlinson will happily keep an eye on. And you know who wouldn't want to watch him fight McKee again, or who wouldn't want to watch him fight Judo Gym? So let's definitely see what happens with that fight. And Burlinson's future in the organization, but it's just nice to see him back in the win column. It's always a shame to see Richardson lose, but it's just the way he fights. I don't think he really cares. I think if he has a good fight, if he has an exciting, entertaining fight, that's a win for him, whether he gets his hand raised or not. Such a fun fighter, so nothing but respect to him. But good to see Burlinson back in the win column for sure. Then we had probably the star-making performance of the night, if you ask me, with Lona Kavanagh versus Davide Scarano. Kavanagh is so fucking good, guys. Like, this kid is something else. Even even just talking about it, I'm getting chills, because I love when these young fighters come into the organization, and not only do they do well, but you can see that there's an aura about them. There's something special about them. I get the same feeling with Luke Riley. I get the same feeling with Loughran as well. These are just special fighters, and with Kavanagh, I mean, kid's just a joy to watch. At 125 pounds, he's just so good. He's so fast, comfortable striking out of either stance early. He messes Scarano's lead leg up really, really early into the first round. 3 minutes into the fight, Scarano's shaking his leg out, trying to switch stances, but then realizing he doesn't have anything out of his unorthodox stance. It was so incredible to see Kavanagh just put a beating on the man. It was insane. Like the calf kicks nice and early, and then like any smart fighter, if you've got the legs kind of jeopardized of the opponent, now let's start attacking the head and the body. And he does that. Nice roundhouse kicks to the body. In the second round, he drops him with a leg kick, clips him with a rapid right hook as well that drops Scarano. And then in the third round, it's just picture perfect, right? It's a spinning heel kick, gets the job done nice and early in the third. And yeah, it's picture perfect. I think this kid is a future flyweight champion in Cage Warriors. I think he's definitely UFC bound. He's an incredible fighter. He's so quick. He's so technical. Like I said, comfortable fighting out of either stance. I love this fight against Ander Sanchez. If you folks remember that one last year, where it's not an easy fight for Kavanagh. He does get taken down. He has to go through a few grappling sequences. I think he gets dropped in that fight as well. So it's not a guy that we haven't seen him tested. Obviously Ander Herrera, that's a football player. Ander Sanchez, for me, obviously he's not an incredible fighter. He is fighting this weekend, but it was just good to see Kavanagh put under pressure in the past, so that we know, if this guy gets cracked, what does he look like? If he gets taken down, what does he look like? And he's passed those tests with flying colours, and now it's just, man, just throw him in there with Huck. Let's see him against Huck. Let's see him against Creasy. Throw him in the title match. I don't really care at this point. I think he's definitely UFC bound, and I think one of the cool things on this card was that to see how dominant GB Top Team were. They went 4-0 on the night. We'll talk about their other fighters later. Kavanagh was like the cherry on top of the cake for them. They were brilliant all night. The coaching was awesome in between rounds, in the corners, great instructions for their fighters. And yeah, Kavanagh, guys, is really, really special. I mean, there's not much else to say about the kid at this point. We know he's good. We know he's flashy. We know he's technically sound. We know he can get cracked. We know he can defend grappling sequences. I don't know that he ever progresses to like bantamweight. I know he's still young and his body's still developing, but he's very tiny. He's very much, you know, for me, he's a career flyweight in my opinion. Anyone who knows me from, not even the Cage Warrior stuff, like flyweight's one of my favorite divisions in MMA, has been for years. Even when they were talking about disbanding it in the UFC, I've always been a 125 guy. So seeing Kavanagh just put in work and be such an exciting fighter is, for me personally, really great to see and excites me as well. So not much else to say there. I mean, let's move on to the rest of the card. We then had Kate Bassick versus our Sao or So. Um, God, I hate to be horrible, guys. I don't want to be that guy. Um, I don't know if our So or Sao is any good. I think she just tags along to any card that like Charrier is on. And it's actually hilarious to me that it's twice now that she's been on a Charrier card and twice that he's had to pull out for whatever reason, or his opponent has pulled out and the fight has fallen through. So you've got a bunch of like raucous French people in the crowd just cheering for So because they've not got anything for Charrier, obviously. But I've seen her fight a couple times now in Cage Warriors. I don't really know what she's good at. I don't really know what. She's obviously there to build up the atmosphere, and she's obviously a training partner and a teammate of Charrier, but Kate Bassick, a fighter I actually hadn't watched before. Cage Warriors debut, nice kicking game early, seems comfortable fighting at range, which is always exciting. But also finding success in the grappling department, which is good. Good timing on the takedown for Bassick, and then 4 minutes into the third round, manages to navigate to the back and get the rear naked choke in. So another submission win. If you're following, that's like the third out of four at this point of like covering the card from top down. So Bassick is a fighter that I'm excited to see more of. She definitely has an aura about her that she could be quite an exciting fighter. I don't know that there's much competition for her in Cage Warriors, and it feels like that's one thing that, if you're going to criticize Cage Warriors at the moment, there aren't many female fights. Obviously, we have had, your Joannas in the past, Pani Kianzad in the past. So there have been like credible female fighters to fight in the organization, Molly as well, of course, but I'd like to see them build it out a little bit more. I don't know how viable it is again, but if you're going to have a fighter like Kate Bassick who does look exciting, let's try and build a division again, or build some competition for these fighters, because otherwise it's just going to be her beating on random people who we don't know. So let's see what Cage Warriors do there. But I'm going to move on to the next one because there's not much to say with that fight. So the next fight then is Jan Quayhagens versus Alberto Chiado. So this fight I was really excited for going into it because I think Quayhagens was the underdog, because Chiado's like 6-0, fairly highly rated Italian fighter debuting in Cage Warriors. We know how Cage Warriors have been churning out really good Italian talent recently. So if you see a 6-0 guy, you can probably assume he's pretty good. I'd personally never seen the man fight, but I'm a big Jan Quayhagens fan. The guy's insanely violent, insanely fun to watch, a prolific finisher, which we're going to talk about shortly. And for me, he's one of those fighters. Last year, he was shortlisted for the Yellow Glove Award for best knockout of the year or best finish of the year. He didn't win it, obviously. I ended up giving that to Judo Jim for his knockout over Figlak. But Quayhagens was close, and he's just a nasty, nasty fighter, really violent fighter, very technically sound, which I don't think he gets much credit for. But moving on to this fight, Chiado was aggressive early with the wrestling. He managed to backpack Jan, puts both hooks in, which was crazy to see because it's basically Jan getting dominated, which we're not used to seeing really, at least under the Cage Warriors banner. But how cool was it, for those who watched the fight, how cool was it when you're seeing Chiado dominate Jan, and out of nowhere he just does this crazy quick slick transition, manages to get an armbar in off his back out of nowhere. Chiado gets reversed insanely well by Quayhagens. It was great to see. The grappling speed from Quayhagens is mad. Again, this is why I say I don't think he gets enough credit for me personally, because we see him as a slugger, we see him as a banger, but actually this guy's also really good at just grappling and just being able to stave off attacks from his opponents, right? So the timing on Jan's knees, we already know, are brilliant. Chiado eats a really, really nasty knee, but manages to get a takedown while also eating that knee. So props to his chin. Definitely something about Italian fighters that they've got these big old heads and they can't be knocked out. So That was great to see from Chiado being able to survive that. He manages to actually get a rear naked choke in the second round on Quay Higgins, and Quay Higgins' face is changing all types of colors, but manages to survive the choke by turning into it, which isn't always the smartest thing to do. But I guess because it wasn't the first round and they weren't, they were a bit slippery. They weren't as dry as they would be in the first. It managed to work for Quay Higgins. Then Quay Higgins actually manages to get on top late into the second round of the fight. He's definitely losing the fight at this point, but he then starts cracking these insane elbows. There's even a point where Chiado has his back and Quay Higgins is like striking his head like behind him. Like I'm trying to do it, but obviously you can't see me. But watch the fight if you haven't, because that was pretty cool to see. But yeah, Quay Higgins gets the elbows, just breaks Chiado. You can see Chiado's gassed out from all the grappling, from trying to get the submission. And yeah, Quay Higgins just puts the fucking pace on him with those elbows late into the second round, just manages to break Chiado. And guys, we're now looking at a man who's got 11 wins on his record, 11 finishes. I think he's got about 4 or 5 finishes either late into the second round or into the third round. He's someone who isn't going to gas out. He's someone who's going to survive fights. He's going to survive being in uncomfortable positions. He's not always going to win rounds, but he's going to find a way to win fights. And I think that's a very exciting prospect of a fighter. For me personally, when Quay Higgins did the little, motion, the belt after winning, like strapping his waist. For me personally, I'd love to see Quay Higgins in a title fight at 155 pounds. I think it will happen in 2023. He's just such an exciting fighter. Like I said, doesn't get enough credit for being as defensively sound and as defensively aware as he is in fights. You look at a guy who's got 11 wins and they're all finishes, and you think he's probably just a slugger, like a meathead who's going to go toe to toe with someone and take their head off. Not the case. This man will find his, will find his moments, will find little pockets in a fight to deliver his violence, right? And he does that definitely in late into the second round in this fight with Chiado. I would like to see Chiado again. I think one of the cool things was he seemed quite a dominant grappler, someone who's quite hard nosed. So definitely could make a run at 155. Maybe I'd like to see him fight again in Cage Warriors, 100%. But yeah, Jan Quay Higgins, one of my favorite fighters right now. Just want to see this man just scrap with people and just have great fights. So title shot imminent potentially. Let's see how that goes. Next fight then was Nick Bagley versus Wesley Machado. Nick Bagley, one of the GB Top Team fighters. As we spoke about, GB Top Team went 4-0, so I'm probably giving away the result if for whatever crazy reason you're listening to this and you don't know the results. Bagley for me is a really exciting fighter under the Cage Warriors banner. He obviously lost his previous fight against Ben Ellis, but prior to that, debuted with a really nice rear naked choke over Scott Pedersen. And against Wesley Machado, it was a great fight. I mean, well, it was a great fight for Nick Bagley for as long as it lasted. I don't think Wesley Machado would ever think it to be a great fight, but he goes straight in. Beginning of the fight, insane takedown from Bagley, double leg takedown, really explosive. Basically spears him to the ground. Essentially, like if you were ever like a WWE or WWF guy, like a Rhino Gore or like an Edge spear, he literally just fucking tackles Wesley to the ground. Machado's got a really nice active guard off his back. Has his elbow to create space, kind of like a Gilbert Burnsy type fighter. He's got that guard where if you're on top of him, he's not just going to sit there and close his guard and try to triangle you. Like, he's going to do nasty things off his back. He's going to try and elbow. He's going to try and punch. He's going to try and manipulate some sort of arm or try and get some arm lock in to make you uncomfortable. And when Machado or when fighters move like that, sometimes the fighter on top gets a bit kind of panicky and ends up losing the position or just standing the fight back up. But Bagley actually just stays patient, does a really good job to get on top, transitions nicely into half guard and then transitions into mount, like really slick grappling. And then it's just really good elbows from Bagley. Machado tries to bridge off the fence to escape, but, low fight IQ moment because he basically gets his back taken by Bagley. And again, if you've been listening, another rear naked choke, another submission win. First round. Nick Bagley's really good, guys. Another guy who has a pretty extensive amateur career. Fought guys like Kingsley Crawford, fought Kavanagh actually as an amateur. Also fought Eglin as an amateur a few years ago. So he's definitely got a good pedigree despite only being 3-1 as a pro. He's fought a lot of times and he's got a nice background. A guy I want to see more of under the Cage Warriors banner, 145 pounds. He definitely excites me personally, so can't wait to see what he does next. All right, moving on to the next fight, we've got Daniel Skibber, which I love to call him, great nickname, against Emil Brown. And I've got some opinions on this fight, guys. Some, a little bit disappointed with Emil Brown's performance. If you listened to the pod last year, or if you follow me, I'm a big Emil Brown guy. He fights out of Renegade. He's a really exciting fighter, heavy hands, great attacker of the neck. He's got great guillotine choke, great anaconda choke. He's just someone who knows how to finish fights. He's explosive. He's powerful. He's, for me, one of the most exciting fighters under the Cage Warriors banner and one of the most exciting prospects under the Cage Warriors banner. But going into this fight, you thought, can Skibber be cracked? Yes. I mean, we've just seen him get knocked out not long ago by Judo Jim. We know he can go down. We know he can be knocked out. He's actually winless under the Cage Warriors banner, I believe, or at least in his most recent stint. He's like was 0-3 going into this fight. But I had a weird feeling when you put these young guys against these, like I say, hard-nosed veterans and these grindy type of fighters. It's either they're going to be able to crack that chin early or they're going to get blanketed, right? And for Emil, it was really disappointed because, sorry, for Emil, it was really disappointing because he had that fight in the palm of his hand, and it would have been such a great win for him to beat a guy like Skibber, one of those veterans that the Cage Warriors have under their banner. It's really disappointing. I can't even hide my disappointment on this one as a big Emil Brown fan. Skibber, straight up wrestling nice and early, gets Emil down a couple of times. Emil's obviously quite active in trying to defend the grappling, but little by way of offense aside from like this awkward angled guillotine attempt. When you're such a prolific attacker of the neck, there's going to be times where you're just going to go for it because you've got the squeeze or you've got the angle. You've done it in training. You've done it while rolling. You're able to get these weird angled guillotine chokes. So he tries to go for it on Skibber, doesn't manage to get it. But what it does is it puts him in bad positions. Emil, it lets Skibber be on top of him, and Skibber's not doing much while he's on top. He's striking a little bit. He's not really looking for submission attempts. He's just trying to break Emil. And Emil's not someone that can really be broken, but he definitely gets dominated in that first round. Second round starts, Skibber, same thing, body lock, clinching, taking Emil down. The thing is, Emil doesn't stay down for too long, and he's always trying to do something. But like I said, in his doing of that something, he puts himself in bad positions, right? But there is a moment in the second round where Emil kind of clocks him with this nice right hand. Wobbles Skibber. Skibber's definitely on wobbly legs, but then Emil just does the thing that we always know. We always don't like to see fighters do. You have someone hurt, don't go crazy trying to swing wildly. Emil swings wildly. Again, he's young. He's early into his MMA career. This shit's gonna happen, but in swinging wildly, Skibber's obviously a veteran, even though he's not got all his wits about him after having his head spun. He gets the takedown, gets the fight to the ground, and it's the lack of patience from Emil that costs him in that second round. Because I think if Emil is patient, and I'm sure people will agree with me here, if Emil is patient, even if he hurts Skibber and then just takes him down, because we know again he's got a good like repertoire of for submitting people, right? He's got a really nice choking game, so take Skibber down or be more patient with your shot selection. Swings wildly, gets himself taken down, wins the second round in my opinion. But again, it's Skibber just blankets him again. Third round, more grappling, takes Emil's back. There's this moment where Emil hurts Skibber and like Skibber's on his knees, right? And Emil's standing over him, and you think, don't follow him. Like that, he's on his knees, he's wobbled. Get him to stand back up. Don't go following him. And then Emil just chases him, swings at him again wildly while Skibber's on his knees. Or he's already on his knees. What's he going to do? He's going to attack the legs, attacks Emil's legs, gets him down. Strauss was amazing in the commentary on this fight, though, because whenever there's a grappling sequence, he's brilliant. And I think Brad does a really good job on the commentary of just letting Strauss do his thing and letting him do the color commentary when it comes to the grappling. These two are just brilliant. I mean, Brad's put in the work, and Brad's, for me, the gold standard. Like him and Anik are just 1 and 2, and the gap between them and the gap between them and anyone else is absolutely massive, right? But he lets Strauss do the talking. Strauss is losing his mind. The skipper goes for a Von Flue attempt, and Strauss is actually screaming at this point because he's never seen one like live while commentating in MMA. So I found that really funny. But what I didn't find funny was Emil Brown's performance, guys. Skibber, again, blankets him in the third round. 29-28 to Skibber. Very fair result. A proper kind of grindy veteran performance. Gets his Cage Warriors win. Gets his win in the yellow gloves. Very disappointing for Emil, but you hope with such a good camp behind him, such a good team behind him, that he learns from this fight. And, this is why you take these fights. They're opportunities to learn. So hopefully we see Emil back. Hopefully we see him having learned a few things, a bit more patience in his game, because he's got all the explosiveness. He's got all the technical gifts, all the physical gifts even. He just needs that tighten up the IQ, tighten up the smartness, and tighten up that patience. And I think, again, he's destined for great things in Cage Warriors, but it just wasn't meant to be for him in this fight. So, guys, the next one was Eglin versus Merryacre, and I'm just, like I said, I'm just going to burn through these fights. So, Eglin, I tweeted about this. He might be the best 3-2 fighter on the planet. Obviously, a storied amateur background. I think he fought like Makayev. He's fought Nathan Fletcher. He's fought Nick Bagley as well. When guys have such a credible amateur background, you always trust them to bounce back from like bad situations as pros. And Eglin was on a 2-fight losing streak going into this fight, but he fought like someone who wasn't. He was very patient. Doing his usual like body shots. He checked a couple of leg kicks early, which I think dissuaded Merryacre from going for more kind of calf kicks and those lower body attempts. And then the great moment for Jack Eglin is like he feints this nice left hand, feeds Merryacre the right. It's like a really kind of textbook boxing combination. It's just awesome work from Eglin. I think he was so technically composed in this fight. Very excited to see what he does next at 135 pounds. Very good performance. It's good to see him back in the win column. Then we had Wesley Maia versus Bogdan Barbu. Maia just straight up looked like Charles Oliveira out there. Bleached hair, Muay Thai stance, grappling, body lock takedown, going into half guard, attacking the chokes. It was just really good to see this guy back in the win column. Obviously, he had some Cage Warriors fights in the past. I mean, he's currently a rostered fighter, but it's been 2 years since we'd seen him fight. Back when he was in Cage Warriors in 2018, I mean, the guy lost to Jack Shaw. He's fought Martin Yoni. He's fought Rory Evans. So he's fought some really tough opposition. But against Bogdan Barbu, almost 2 years out from MMA, comes back and just looks so good on the ground. I mean, Barbu's just such a bad fighter on the ground. Like, it is what it is. Like, Wesley Maia just completely dominated him on the ground. Worked him really well. Usual combinations, body, head, body, like your textbook 90s, early 2000s MMA striking on the ground, but it worked. Barbu couldn't find his way to his feet. And then Maia gets the rear naked choke with seconds remaining on the second round. Really nice finish. Rebounds from back-to-back Cage Warriors losses, which is always good to see. Barbu's now 0-3 in Cage Warriors. Don't know if we see him again. 17-14. Maybe someone that you feed to like an up-and-coming prospect, but I wouldn't be surprised if we don't see Barbu again. And then, guys, we had the first fight of the night and the last fight I'll talk about here, which was Omran Shaban versus Mush Aslani. Mush is one of the renegade guys. Fabian Edwards was in his corner, which was good to see. We know what a special night Fabian and the Edwards brothers had just the day after. So this fight was kind of exciting for me early on, just because I know both of their styles. They're quite active, exciting fighters, quite explosive fighters. Then we had the weigh-ins, and there was a lot of pushing and shoving, a lot of jawing at each other, and suddenly you get a bit more excited for this fight, which was, again, the first fight of the night. These aren't really fights you're supposed to be incredibly hyped over, but this is a testament to the matchmaking that Cage Warriors have and the matchmaking that they put together, right? So it was a tentative opening to that fight. Shaban was, patient, prodding jab to the body, really, really good. Short right hook from Shaban dropped Aslani halfway through the first round. Shaban's balance as Aslani held his leg at one point was insane. I mean, if you watch the fight, you know what I'm talking about. Aslani has Shaban's head has his leg pretty much over his head, and Shaban's just like bouncing on one leg, not getting taken down, which was amazing. Drops Aslani again with a big right hand. He's such a slick fighter. He's got this really nice front kick, and the grappling obviously is there. Good attacker of the neck. And, boy, do we know it, because late into the first round, Asllani goes for a takedown, and what does Shaban do? He's already got him discombobulated. He's already dropped him twice. He's already hurt him multiple times. He just stuffs the takedown attempt, grabs the neck, rolls for the anaconda choke. Just a beautiful submission, and really set the tone for this card. A card that had, if I count it now, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 submissions. So of the 9 finishes on the night, 6 of them were submissions, and all neck attacks, right? All rear naked chokes or anaconda choke in this instance. So that kind of puts a bow on the event. It was a really, really good event. Like I said, Cage Warriors 150 was great. 10 fights, 9 finishes, loads of submissions, which I always love to see. Commentary was brilliant on this card. Just it was good to have Cage Warriors back doing their usual UK stuff. It was, for me, just I loved it, and it's great to see. And we've got another card coming up this Friday, which is the Unplugged card, where Stanton is fighting Will Curry for the vacant middleweight belt, which was obviously vacated by Christian Leroy Duncan, who won his UFC debut. Happy days, although probably not happy days because it was a very weird ending to the fight. But Christian Leroy Duncan, great to see him win. But that Unplugged card, guys, I was going to do a preview of it, but I realized that not many people are going to listen to me talk twice in a week about Cage Warriors. So I'm just going to leave you with this recap of this card, and we'll do a recap of the Unplugged card as well next week. So I think that probably leaves us in kind of a good stead in terms of content. So guys, if you enjoyed the pod, please leave a review, leave a like. I mean, it's everywhere. It's on Google Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts. It's also on the Buzzsprout website, which is the RSS host that I use for the pod. So yeah, if you leave a review, it's always good. I mean, it's nice to see. It kind of helps expose the podcast to a bigger audience. But other than that, guys, have a brilliant day or evening, whenever or wherever you're listening to this. And yeah, I'll catch you on the next one.